I'm Glenn. Welcome to my workshop. A few weeks ago I posted a video of two different methods to make an adapter to fit a cross refill into a vintage Hallmark wood pin. I knew when I made that video that the methods, especially for the brass adapter that I showed, while it can be made from materials and tools that are readily available on Amazon, that most people weren't going to have the additional workshop tools needed to make that brass adapter. After I made that video, several people messaged me and asked me if I was willing to make the brass adapters available for sale. The methods I used in the first video, with taking about an hour to make that adapter, is not practical to try and make something that I could make available for sale at a reasonable price point. So I decided to see if by using my benchtop metal lathe, if I could dramatically reduce the time to make each adapter so that they could be sold at a reasonable price. That's the purpose of this video today. I will show the steps necessary to do that. To cut to the chase, I was able to reduce the time from an hour per adapter to just under 15 minutes per adapter. And I made enough that I have a small batch that are available for sale. If you want to go straight to the details for buying an adapter, the information is below. I have a TikTok account and an Instagram account. Please message me and we can make arrangements to send you one or more adapters if you're interested. For anybody that's interested in how I made these adapters using a lathe instead of a drill press, then the rest of this video is for you. And I will go through the step-by-step process for making these adapters using a benchtop metal lathe. So I broke out my benchtop lathe. This is a nice little machine from a website called Little Machine Shop. I've had this lathe for close to 10 years, I think. And it's great because it's relatively portable. In my workshop, I work in a lot of different media, and I need to convert it from, say, woodworking to metalworking to jewelry working or jewelry plating or doing lapidary work or whatever it is of the various medium that I like to work in. So this is relatively portable. It does take a couple people to carry it to put it away, but I can get it out, put it on a benchtop, and put it away when I'm done. It has some really nice features like digital readouts, which help me make sure that I can repeat the cuts and the amount of a cut that I've made. So for doing repetitive things like making a bunch of these brass adapters, I think this little machine will work out really great for me. I did buy an adapter to put die in here because one end of the pin adapter requires threading. And having a die adapter such as this will make that job much, much easier. It's tough to do in a vise to get it straight on something like this because everything is lined up for you in the lathe. It should be a fairly easy job to do. The process of making these Hallmark pin adapters requires 8 specific machining steps. What this benchtop lathe will do for me is allow me to make it easier to do repetitive cuts on multiple copies of the adapters. So I set the machine up so that each machining operation I had to do, I could do on multiple links of the brass tubing stock, and therefore reduce the total amount of time that it takes to make each adapter. It's still a manual process. The only thing this lathe will do for me is it allows me to make cuts repetitively the same way on each adapter on multiple copies of the adapter. The first step in making the brass adapters is to cut the pin end of the brass tubing blank to the size I need to be able to thread it for the 1032 threads that fit into the cross pin cartridge. After I cut the tubing to size to accept threading, I have to put a taper on the end of the cut portion so that the tap will thread onto the brass tubing more readily. Cutting the external threads is a manual process. Cutting the tube to size and tapering it to accept the threading, we're done with the lathe on. Cutting the threads itself has to be done carefully by hand. I can't use the lathe motor to drive that process. After cutting the threads, I cut a clean shoulder for where the adapter is going to fit into the Hallmark pin. The next step in the process is to cut the adapter to length from the brass tube stock. For this, I use a cutting tool in the lathe. After the adapter blank is cut from the brass tubing, I turn it around, put it back into the lathe so that we can do the drilling and tapping on the end of the adapter that needs to accept the cross pin refill. The first step in the process is to drill out the tubing to the correct size to be able to tap it to the 1036 threads that the cross refill requires. And after that, again, a manual process where I tap the internal threads for the cross refill. After the drilling and tapping are done, I clean off the burr at the very end of the brass stock that resulted from the cutting process. After the machining process, the lathe left quite a few machining marks on the outside of the brass adapters. I decided to go ahead and clean them up a little bit by using a tumbler with some stainless steel shot in it. I have a Lorne tone tumbler that I use for my jewelry work, frequently used for burnishing materials in that trade. I went ahead and put the brass adapters into my tumbler for a couple of hours. This is a picture of the adapters after they came out of the burnisher. Thank you for watching. I hope the process of making these adapters was informative or informational for you. If you are interested in buying an adapter, the information is below. You can contact me in the links for Instagram and TikTok. Thanks again.